I am going to be giving you guys a breakdown for 10X, showing you guys how it came together, all the people involved, how I recorded it. I have a tendency to make something in Ableton and then bring it into Pro Tools to mix it. This track, I didn't take that approach. This whole album, I didn't take that approach. Everything on this album was done completely in Ableton. Created in Ableton, mixed in Ableton, and mastered in Ableton. I used to like mixing in Pro Tools because of the ease in bringing in plugins and everything, but I just found it easy to just contain it in one session. So let's get into it, y'all. This is the session for 10X. How the idea for this track first started was me and Wobble had talked about collaborating on something that Wobble posted in the Discord. And this is the melody. I pretty much just left it completely as is, except I warped it because I changed the tempo of the session. I asked Wobble, I'm like, how did you make that melody? Because Wobble's in FL Studio, and he told me, if I remember correctly, he used a plugin called M Harmonic Ping Only to make that melody. He used a plugin that allows him to play harmonic series note by note through MIDI. So I looked it up online, and it's like a really weird plugin. It's not available on Mac, and it was just really like a weird, obscure plugin. So I thought that was cool that Wobble came up with that plugin. I was going through beats that I had, and the beat that I made with this melody came up, and I was like, yo, I could flip that in a whole new way. I decided to go the route more of this up-tempo 10X vibe. I sent it to my dude, the Funk Raider, and I was like, what do you think of this beat? And he was like, yo, this is dope. So I was like, why don't I spit some vocals on it? And so I put vocals down, and it just bangs. It just bangs. Had the melody, then I designed drums. I froze and flattened it because it took up tons of processor power the way I did it. So here's the kick. Bass. This bass slaps so hard in the car. So this is all made from scratch. You can't get this in any Drums That Knock kits. So I designed the kick, snare, and hi-hat. It's just got bounce. Self-employed. Lifted asked, what device did I use to make the kick? I actually have a custom rack that I make for my sound design. So I take a bunch of plugins and put them together, and then I use that to shape my sounds and create them from scratch. The heart of it is Operator. So I use Operator for most of my sound design. Then I have a pluck. And then just like a bunch of other percussion, claps. I played a live triangle on the beat and live cabasa, just to give it some more bounce. Just other random percussive sounds, so all together. And then on this bridge part, Ayo Nick actually played some chords. So we've been doing a lot of remote collabs. Ayo Nick is all over the album, and he laid down these dope chords on the bridge. So this is what he gave me. Simple, but on the beat. I'm self-employed. And then the cabasa comes back. Hey, yeah. Make it rain if you're self-employed. That's why I love doing live percussion loops. You can really get in the pocket more so than if you're playing something on the grid. I do a lot of live percussion, and you know, I put percussion loops in my Drums That Knock packs, so you could just drag it in and it gives you an off-the-grid sound, which can give it a new bounce. Vocally, I mean, I have a lot of vocal tracks, so I had to do a lot of freezing because all the processing I do on the vocals was just getting extreme. This whole section, hey, yeah, Make it rain if you're self-employed. Oh yeah. Make it bounce. That's me. Oh yeah. Make it knock if you're self-employed. What's next? We going 10X. I actually did group processing on these vocals, and I did additional processing on the stems, but let me show you what I did as far as group processing goes. So without any of this, this is what my vocals sound like. Make it rain if you're self-employed. Oh yeah. Make it bounce.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This was the first song I ever did on the new U87, and it's running into a Silver Bullet preamp. I did some EQ going in to the preamp, and then once it got into Ableton, you can hear the vocals sound clean, but a little bit dull.
Make it rain if you're self-employed.
And this is with the vocal chain.
Make it rain if you're self-employed.
So it just kind of brightens it up, thickens it up. This is what I did. I cut some of the lows. I slammed 3 glue compressors, and this one I have the dry wet set to 56, set to 29, and set to 48. I have a ton of parallel processing on the vocals. All stock Ableton plugins, nothing too crazy. What I find is that it has a natural sound because most of it is the dry signal and there's some wet signal stacking on top of it.
Make it rain if
it is set to soft clipping, but nothing actually crosses over 0 decibels, so it's not actually hitting the soft clipper circuit. After that, I put an OTT on it.
Make it rain if you're self-employed.
And I have it set to 17%, so it's just a little bit of the effect. And I have the high end slammed on the output. So you're only getting a little bit of it, but it's enough to brighten it up. After that, on the group, I put a Trident A-Range plugin, which is a soft tube plugin. I just added a little bit of high end and a little bit of low end, just to boost it up. After that, I used a Fab Filter Pro DS, which is my favorite de-esser. Just does a great job capturing the peaks. So like that S, you can see it highlights in green when there's real peaky, crazy S's. And then, this is one of my secret weapon plugins. It's by Slate. It's called Virtual Mix Rack. I love the Slate stuff. It's just so good. Virtual channel, I set it to USA mode and I turned it up like 10, 15 decibels. What that does is it gives it a very pleasant analog sounding distortion. I usually don't use this one. I use the Neve style EQ. This one I'm hardly doing anything, less than a decibel boost on the top end shelf, maybe 2-3 decibels in the high end, tiny bit of mids and a tiny bit of low end. So hardly anything at all. But it all adds up. It's all cumulative. Just adding little effects here and there start to shape the character and tone. And those of you who have watched my stream know that I'm not going crazy adding tons of effects all the time. Sometimes it's just small effects that add up over time. After that, I have the Distressor. It's called the FG Stress.
Make it rain if you're self-employed.
It's not hitting that hard. It's only going to about 6 decibels of gain reduction. Sometimes it's hitting the 7. 6-to-1 ratio, and I have the mix knob set to just over 50%. So it's, again, another parallel effect just to give it more color. After that, I like this device. It's called Revival. Shimmer gives you top end on the vocal, so I'm hitting it at like 4, and I'm hitting the thickness at 16. And I think that's kind of like a mid bump. So I use thickness on drums, definitely breakbeats, and Shimmer is great on vocals or anything you want to kind of shine through the mix a bit. So that is on the vocal group, and then I have like groups and groups. One effect I like to use is the doubler, Waves doubler. I made a dry wet chain for doubler, so it doesn't have to be the full wet signal. I'll show you doubler before and after. This is without it.
Self-employed.
And with it.
Self-employed.
Just widens it. On a lot of the vocals, I used a gate because these headphones have a lot of bleed through because they're open backs. I did something that is a no-no. I recorded the vocals with open back headphones. So as I was bumping it, you can hear in the vocals there's a lot of bleed through happening. So I don't recommend doing that. It was a mistake, but hey, you know, we're just creatives. We don't have to be perfect all the time. And the shit sounds fat. I have this blue mic arm attached to my desk. And I did this for live streaming. I used to have a mic just in the room off to the side. I found that I wasn't using it that much when I did that. Now that I have this mic attached to the desk, I'm wanting to record vocals all the time. I want to record whatever all the time. I will never go back to a mic booth or having a mic set up on a stand. I love this setup. Just right at my desk, on my keyboard, I can pull out the bottom part and have my samplers, drum machines, MIDI keyboard, everything. After the doubler, I just use an Ableton phase flanger.
We getting fly, fly, fly.
So on this, I'm just doing a low cut, an Ableton stock delay set to 4, at dry wet at 50. I have a flanger on that. I threw a SketchCassette on it, which is a cool tape plugin with some light effects on it. And this plugin, little AlterBoy by Sound Toys, and let me show you what it does for those who don't know. So this is without it.
We getting fly, 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 fly.
It just pitches it up.
We getting fly, 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 fly. We getting fly, fly, fly.
You can pitch up or down vocals. A lot of you might already know about this, but for those who don't. And then you can adjust your formant. So I'll show you what that sounds like. So I have it set to 3.9.
We getting fly, fly, fly. We getting fly, fly, fly. We getting fly, fly, fly.
We getting fly, fly. We getting fly, fly.
I love this plugin. It has so much control over the sound. I didn't use any drive, but a lot of times I do. It sounds good.
We getting fly, fly.
So if you want a more distorted sound, you can turn that up. That's the character for that.
Self-employed.
So obviously I stacked the self-employed melody.
What's next? Next. We going 10x.
So for the more rap vocals that I'm not singing on, I did a low cut at about 100 hertz because it was already a low cut going in, so I didn't need to cut too much. I have a gate to just get rid of the background noise. I'm slamming a glue compressor, but only at 30% parallel processing. And then I put a saturator after that.
What's next? Next. What's next?
Again,
What's next?
hardly perceivable differences, just minor additions happening over multiple plugins. So not one plugin is doing too much of the legwork. Virtual mix rack, again, exactly what I showed you last time. I'm not using any EQ. All I'm doing is giving a little bit of boost on the virtual channel. So I actually didn't do too much on this. All I did was give a little bit of boost to the virtual channel, probably even imperceivable. Then I added a delay at 4, 39% feedback, just a little bit of dry wet. After that, I put a doubler. I probably would have put the doubler earlier in the chain. This is an ad-lib channel.
Hey. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to go crazy with the ad-libs. And then on the second verse,
I'm making digits.
again, like for that part, I just pitched it down in Ableton. All I did was pitch it down 6 semitones with the complex warp algorithm.
Huh? Make it bounce.
Make it bounce.
Hi. Oh, yeah.
Did the
Yes.
same thing with that, just pitched it down.
Hi. Oh, yeah. Yes. Make it.
With that, I just wanted to get funny with the ad-libs, so I just manually chopped it in Ableton. And then other than that, just like little effects. So
X.
I think I just got that on Splice or something. I got some more effects. I just got this on Splice at the end of the track. Just like a little crash I downloaded. It's a Cashmere crash. And then like a little reversed vocal sample I got on Splice. This is some live percussion from, I believe, Drums That Knock Volume 6. Some more Drums That Knock 6 percussion. What I did for that is I just took a little vocal that I laid down. I don't even care what you think of me. And I put it in beats mode, pitched it down, and it just gave it that cool transient type effect. And then the beginning of the track, I have this little explosion sound that I got off Splice. And the reason I put that in there is not necessarily because it fits the track. I put it in there because of the placement of this track on the album. That sound is actually a continuation from the last track that came before this on the album. You'll have to wait till the album drops next week to hear why. If we look at the master channel, the first plugin on the master is just a Fab Filter Pro Q3. I do this for a lot of tracks. I will just cut below about 30 hertz because that's information that certain speakers cannot reproduce. I don't do that all the time, but for this track I did. Set it to linear phase and just cut the lows at about 26 with a medium slope. After that, I put Sound Theory Gullfoss, go-to plugin. It makes everything sound better. It helps out with the phase on your track, and it just adjusts the EQ curve of your track to just sound better. After that, I just have a multiband dynamics. It's a multiband compressor. It comes stock in Ableton, and by default, nothing is happening. If you look at it, none of these are activated, but just by putting this multiband dynamics on your track with nothing activated, it slightly changes the tone. How many of you guys know about that? I want you guys to try it. If ever like you have a beat or a song where maybe the drums are poking out a little too much, instead of throwing a compressor on the track, try throwing a multiband dynamics on it and just don't touch anything. Just leave it stock and do nothing. It will subtly duck and compress and mold your sound. There's some kind of default thing going on in there. Give it a try. It's a cheat code. I don't think I ever talked about this. After multiband dynamics, I did the same thing with a saturator. Just took the default plugin, soft sine, didn't do anything, and I just turned down the dry wet to just tame the effect a little. So saturators on parallel. Then I used Newfangled Audio Saturate and just added a little bit of clipping, 1.7 decibels, just to crunch it up. And then after that, I got a Fab Filter Pro L2. I have oversampling on. The gain is set to 0. The reason why I put this on the track, and I talked about this before with you guys, the way Spotify works is they want you to submit tracks at -14 LUFS. But a lot of people get it confused. You actually don't have to submit at -14 LUFS. If you decide not to, what they recommend is you set your true peak to -2. What I have here is on the output, I have my true peak set to -2 decibels. When Spotify has to resample for like different formats, just streaming in general, there's enough headroom so you won't clip on true peak. For any of you who don't know about mastering, if you submit louder than -14 LUFS, you want to set your true peak to -2. I just learned that a couple weeks ago, so for this whole album, I use Pro L2 to set the true peak to -2.